It is not the early 2000s anymore. We have metalcore now. You know when all your friends were starting bands and they needed a place to play, so one of your friends would set them up in their backyard and you'd have this great doom metal experience with a Yorkie on your lap, your boys by your side, and those three little letters that just make everything better? Well, what if I told you guys that in what is basically the backyard of a major metropolitan city, you could have that same DIY experience with major budget, bigger bands, and we replace the Yorkie with a pig? Well, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary individuals, allow me to introduce you to the late Mr. Shane McCow and Mr. Riot Mike and their Riot Fest. What started as a series of punk shows across major Chicago rock venues has transformed into what I believe to be the poster child for how to run a rock festival. No, a music festival in this day and age. It's probably the only festival in the world that perfectly accomplishes the phrase, something for everyone. I always believed that if we lived in a truly just world, somebody would come along and document all the great things that Riot Fest has done. And just like when my girlfriend leaves her lighter in the other room, I guess it's up to me. And I should state right out that this is not going to be an all-encompassing history of the festival. I'm being sent to go get a lighter. I'm not trying to show you guys how fire was started. The world may not be just, but that day is indeed today.
Burger! Something's wrong!
As we all know, rock music is the only good musical genre. Ain't none of that electro Euro dance bullshit here. And hip-hop? I'm sorry, you mean the genre about butts? Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that one, brother. I'm gonna stick here real happy with my real music like Scorpions and Dream Theater. You know, bands that write lyrics about actual things. Foghead is Lord! This right here, this is how most rock festivals operate. Y'all, it is not the early 2000s anymore. Limp Bizkit are no longer a laughingstock. Diddy has stopped sampling Led Zeppelin. We have metalcore now. The genres can coexist, and not just coexist, but come together. In 2021, we're living in a world that Lil Nas X built. And when he came into town, riding on that horse, tied down to the Old Town Road was the concept of genre waiting to be trampled. And Riot Fest has known this for a long, long time. At the beginning, yeah, they had mostly punk and indie bands, but as early as 2013, Public Enemy was on stage alongside Danzig and the Replacements. This was followed by Wu-Tang Clan in 2014, and after that, it just exploded. Snoop Dogg, Denzel Curry, MIA, Cypress Hill, Death Grips, Puya, and in 2015, a little guy by the name of Post Malone, who is the reason why Ozzy Osbourne got into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 in 2019. Riot Fest has known that if you don't include bands that are not punk or metal on your lineup, you're gonna be forgotten and you're gonna end up with Whitesnake headlining. Here I go again indeed. But while Riot Fest isn't just about being rock, it's also not about just being aggro. The man screaming about Foghat that I showed you a couple of seconds ago is named Crash Thompson. He's one of my favorite YouTubers ever. One of my favorite videos of his is in a series that he does called I Hate This Song. In this one, he's talking about Shinedown's cover of Simple Man by Lynyrd Skynyrd. I know what you're thinking. I know a lot of you guys like that song. He makes some points. Just hear him out. In this video, he explains how dynamics work in music. And it can be the same way for festivals. If everything at your festival is all loud and aggro and rough all the time, your audience is going to get at best overwhelmed and at worst bored. That's why at Riot Fest, they try to add genres that are in the niches that other festivals would build themselves entirely around. It's like if Vakken met Boston Calling, because for every Paramore, there's a Turnstile. For every Blondie, there's a Fishbone. And for every Flaming Lips, there is another song by the Flaming Lips. They're a very eclectic band. Wait a minute, Ronnie. All of those bands and artists are from completely different eras of music. Why on earth would you put all of them on the same lineup? Well...
Oh God, we're your parents!
If you've been watching the more music-centric side of YouTube for a while now, you're probably familiar with Finn McKenty and his YouTube channel, The Punk Rock MBA. In his video, 3 Reasons Why Rock is Dying, you see him using the 2019 Riot Fest lineup as an example of how rock festivals are not putting younger bands higher on the bill. And for the most part, I think he's completely correct about why rock is dying in the mainstream, especially when it comes to these festivals who put the same ancient bands on the very top of the bill every single year. And on the surface, yeah, Riot does also seem to be prioritizing these legacy acts. But things get way more interesting when you look at the daily lineups and particularly what stages the bands are playing on. I'm gonna assume for my own sake that your head is filled with brains and not green jelly, and that you understand that the headliners play at the end of a festival day and that all of the other bands play from when the festival opens until those headliners are slated to play, okay? They're not just gonna leave a stage empty all day. And it would be so easy for Riot Fest to just do what every other festival does and put those smaller bands on some puny stage to the side. And yeah, that kind of is what happens with the Rebel stage sometimes. But even this stage does what good festivals are supposed to do. Put huge bands on at the end as the headliners that people are going to wait all day for, and then fill up the rest of the day with new bands that the kids are going to get excited about and then get them into the scene, as well as pleasing the older people who want to stay up to date with what's going on in the scene and just bond with the Zoomers. Meanwhile, the Gen Xers, Boomers, and Millennials, they get to see the bands that they love, and they get to introduce the Zoomers to those bands. PQ 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 plays right before Anti-Flag. While you're waiting to see Slayer, you get to see Turnstile's amazing live show. And this kind of practice helps these bands prosper. The first time I ever saw The Story So Far live was in 2017 at Riot Fest on the Radical stage while waiting for Mayday Parade and A Day to Remember. 2 years later at Riot 2019, they're playing right before three bands you might have heard of called Anthrax, Rise Against, and Slayer. All those sweaty dudes waiting in the sun all day to mosh for Slayer got to hear songs like Nerve and Quicksand and Rome. And while at other festivals, metalheads might have scoffed at a pop-punk band like The Story So Far because of the variations in genre that Riot Fest has made so integral into their lineup decisions, people are more likely to look at bands that are outside of their genre comfort zones. And next year, when I am dying of dehydration, waiting for My Chemical Romance, I'm going to see a lot of bands that I would never have been exposed to, and it's because of Riot Fest that I'll be able to find probably some of my favorite new bands in the world. And also, Riot Fest knows where the money is at this point. Last year when My Chemical Romance announced that they were going to be headlining Riot Fest, they did a lot of numbers. They did not sell out the festival. MGK gets announced for this year. Riot Fest gets sold out. I've been going to Riot Fest since 2017. I've never seen it sold out. And speaking of My Chemical Romance...
I'm a misfit. I'm from the Misfits.
There have been very few lineup announcements that have instilled true emotion into me. One of them, I was in my junior year of high school. I was hanging with the homies Kiki and Nate at lunch, and I checked my Facebook, and I see this headline. Riot Fest releases 2016 lineup. Misfits to reunite with vocalist Glenn Danzig and bassist Jerry Only. And me, all the way back in Marblehead, Massachusetts, not even living in Chicago yet, this causes me to also release something from the front of my pants area. The idea of the Misfits reuniting now sounds less impressive because they've done it a bunch of times, and even next year at Riot Fest, they're going to be reuniting again for the 40th anniversary of Walk Among Us, where they're going to be playing the album in full. That's going to be sick, by the way. But here's the thing, in 2016... this was a massive deal. This was the first time in 33 years that Danzig, Jerry, and Doyle were in a room together that wasn't a courthouse. And now they're blasting through 25 of their songs in front of a massive crowd in Chicago and Denver that sold out their merch in a matter of minutes. And this massive reunion alone was far from the only reunion that Riot Fest has done that you thought was so out of the question that the question mark key on your keyboard just straight up got off of your laptop and just went to Africa to go find itself. The Replacements in 2013, 22 years after their onstage breakup at Taste of Chicago. Jawbreaker in 2017, 21 years after the Salem, Oregon fistfight between Blake and Chris. Fucking Even if they tour afterwards, you feel in that moment as though you're witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And it doesn't even have to be a reunion. Over the years, performers at Riot Fest have been given the chance to perform their greatest works in full in front of a group of adoring fans. Back in 2017, I was able to see Mayday Parade perform the entirety of their 2007 album, A Lesson in Romantics. Now, obviously, they had been on tour with that album all summer. It wasn't a special thing for them to just be doing at Riot Fest, but when you take into account that at that 2017 Riot Fest, there were also live performances of Retreat from the Sun, Danzig 3, and Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers in full, you begin to realize that you're not just cooking with gas, you are cooking with Riot Fest gas. And that skillet is hot, hot, hot. When Riot has a band play, it's not just a performance. It's a moment in history. A moment that you can feel your heart and mind leading up to as the day goes on. And you will hold on to that moment for years to come. When you walk around the grounds of Douglas Park with your friends, long time or short time, young or old, boomer or zoomer, at a certain point, you all just look around and you take a moment and you all think to yourself the exact same thought that you would have if it was just you and your homies in someone's backyard. We're here.